Associate Professor Sandra Gattenhof is Head of Drama in the Creative Industries, QUT. She's also the leader of the Children and Youth Cultures strand within the QUT Research Centre for Children and Youth Research. She's also the convener on the Teaching Artist Conference. Is that your title, convener? No, it's something like that. Sandra specialises in drama, arts in schools and communities, and contemporary performance for children and young people. I can attest to the fact that Sandra is a lifelong educator and she's a trained primary school teacher, and she has a passion for arts-based projects. I think the energy and the enthusiasm of Sandra, I think I heard last week that in a month she'd signed contracts for 2 books, one about iPads and the use of iPads in early childhood, and the second one on cultural measurement. Is that right? Yes. She's also been at the forefront, of course, of the development of the National Arts Curriculum, serving as an Australian group member, the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority group member and drama consultant. She is Drama Australia's board member in the role of Director of Strategic Partnership and Drama Australia's representative on the National Advocates for Arts Education, the body that successfully lobbied the federal government for the inclusion of the arts in the Australian national curriculum. She's past Vice President of International Drama Education and past President of Drama Australia and Drama Queensland. In the last 3 years, she's undertaken large-scale arts evaluation projects for Brisbane Festival and for Queensland Performing Arts, particularly around the Kites Yonder project. In 2011, she was the recipient of QUT's Creative Industries Faculty Dean's Award for Excellence in Research and Innovation, and in 2012 she was also made a life member of Drama Queensland. She has had, the awards go on, and I'm not going to read them all because most of you know Sandra anyway, but if you don't, besides all of that, she's one of those people that has enormous energy. She's a friend and someone that if she says she's going to do something, it's always done. She's done a wonderful job on ACARA and we owe her a great debt. Please make her welcome.
Thank you, Judith. It's always very scary when you hear your own biography because you begin to believe that that's the person you are. I don't, which is even scarier, but thank you very much for that. Good afternoon, friends and colleagues. It is my delight to see so many familiar faces, some of which I've taught, which is even scarier. And it is also a pleasure to be able to deliver this keynote. I would like to thank Dr. Judith McLean, QPAC Scholar in Residence, for this most kind invitation. Before I begin, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we stand and recognise that they have always been places of arts and teaching and learning. I wish to pay my respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people continue to play within our artistic communities. Some of you know that my choice of art form is drama and/or theatre. The nomenclature depends on which continent you reside. I variously refer to myself as a primary school drama specialist, a drama pedagogue, a drama teacher, an arts researcher, or more recently, a disruptive interventionist. Do you like that? That term applies when I'm working and teaching in a community arts context. I guess I'm most at home with the term arts educator, and it's from this platform that I'd like to speak. There are 3 questions I'd like to focus on to position what we do with and for students both in and out of formal school contexts across the arts. These questions are: what is the place of art in the 21st century Australian society? Why is it important for our students to learn about and experience the arts? And why is the national curriculum for the arts so important to us as arts educators at this point in history? I'd like to address the last question first. The endorsement of the Australian National Curriculum for the Arts is historic. For the first time, all Australian students have an entitlement, and that's a really important word. Entitlement is the key word, to be engaged in all 5 art forms: dance, drama, music, visual art and media arts. We have never had that in Australia ever before, ever. What can be achieved in terms of what happens in secondary schools, in tertiary institutions, and ultimately in the cultural life and heritage for Australia will be unparalleled. We are giving our young people, both children and adolescents, for the first time in history, the tools to be cultural code breakers, to participate in the arts more fully, and to understand how the arts are unique ways of making meaning. The Australian arts curriculum could be considered to be exemplary in the international context in terms of its breadth of its scope, the considerable attention to defining its own language, and the lengths it goes in recognising the differences in abilities and learning opportunities for students at different age levels. This is particularly relevant as we see the diminution of drama in the UK's national curriculum. Important for us to recognise this in Australia, as we have drawn so much of our inspiration from the UK's policy, its curriculum initiatives, teachers and practitioners from the UK for a long period of time. The Australian arts curriculum considers the importance of the arts in the roles they play and may have in other, raising awareness in other parts of the general curriculum. And if you've looked at the document, you will see that there is very explicit links to literacy, numeracy, critical thinking, cross-cultural and environmental awareness, social and ethical development. They are deliberate to ensure that our students engaged in the arts are really opened up to a breadth of opportunities that the arts provide, not just in the field of aesthetic engagement. Australian students with the curriculum are positioned first and foremost as arts makers, rather than arts makers or audiences in training. We've always in Australia have had this kind of idea that our young people are apprentices in the arts. The curriculum says no, actually they're artists of the here and now. They are making and responding in the here and now, and therefore the art they make and the critique they voice is legitimate. They are not waiting for a date in the future to suddenly be deemed artists or audiences, and that's really important in terms of the development of this curriculum. Another area of equal importance is the notion of flexibility in this curriculum. While this type of skill acquisition, knowledge and engagement for Australian students is marked out in the scope and sequence for each art form, the content is not mandated like other subject areas. This allows teachers across Australia to tailor the curriculum to the unique context of their class, school and community. And in this way, the curriculum is responsive to site, resources and cultural contexts. And you think about states like Queensland, that's hugely important in terms of the rural and remote students that we have all over our state. We can't do a one-size-all-fits model, and this curriculum has not attempted to do that. Why then is it important for students to learn about and experience the arts? The very future of our nation depends on the ability to create and to be creative. During the coming decades, our most important national resources will be human ones. If our nation is continue to continue to meet the challenges of the future, contemporary education will need to develop creative leaders. The arts are an important means of stimulating creativity and problem solving. They can challenge students' perceptions about the world and themselves. Artistic exploration can provide students with outlets for emotions, thoughts and dreams that they may not otherwise have means to express. A student can, if only for a few moments, become another, explore a new role, try out and experiment with various personal choices and solutions to very real problems, the problems they encounter in their own lives. This can happen in a safe atmosphere where actions and consequences can be examined and discussed, and the very real sense experienced without the danger and pitfalls that such experimentation could obviously lead to in the so-called real world. The arts also help students to develop tolerance and empathy. And within this curriculum, there is an acknowledged that today's society is increasingly polarised and somewhat intolerant, and therefore the ability to understand others' motives and choices are critical. The arts can help us build responsible global citizens. For some audiences, and I include young people in this group so as not to ghettoise them, viewing the art product is secondary to engaging in a live and social experience. As a report now over 10 years old said, as consumers of art and culture, young people are as diverse as other sectors of the Australian community. They participate in popular, contemporary and traditional arts and culture, both eagerly and reluctantly, and anywhere in between. Research shows that the current generation, variously called Generation Z, the Millennials, Generation Next, are the most technologically enabled generation of young people ever to live on the planet, and some of them are in this room. They have never known life without the web, social networking sites, online gaming, and are yet the most socially isolated and lonely generation ever. They are connected through Facebook, Twitter, TweetDeck, Tumblr, Instagram, Snapchat, and many other social networking sites as they share their life experiences with each other, but in a virtual space. An article in the Sydney Morning Herald in June of 2011 titled "Generation Y So Connected but Oh So Lonely" reported that a national survey undertaken by Relationships Australia suggested that 30% of Australians' young people are frequently lonely. And the most dominant group there, the 18 to 25-year-olds. Social commentator Hugh Mackay, some of you will know that name, has warned against a new form of RSI, reduced social interaction syndrome, caused by a lack of emotional nutrition, of spending face-to-face time with others. The desire for love, Mackay says, is the deepest of all our desires that, when freely given, offers the most enduring connection to a better world. One vital component of a genuine, loving community is that it must include space for people to spend face-to-face time with each other. This idea is echoed in research of my own. My PhD, now almost 10 years old, which is even scarier, was a survey of 40 performances for and by young people. And the analysis of this content showed that the content of the performances were anchored around the ideas of belonging, connectivity with people, and conversely disconnectivity with people and human relationships. From this evidence, it could be argued that these issues of social inclusion and connectedness weigh heavily on the conscious lives of our young people. So my question is, do the live performing arts have a role in developing social cohesion and well-being for Generation Y and Generation Z, our so-called lonely generations? Well, let's begin by positioning ourselves in the context of the National Cultural Policy released by the Gillard government. The document is broadly aspirational about the role the arts can and do play in the lives of Australians, with an emphasis in a number of sections about productivity advantage, economic outcomes, and the role of the national broadband network. Early in the document, 4 questions are posed to frame the discussion. One of the questions asks, what impacts do the arts and cultural heritage have on our society? On education outcomes and social cohesion. For this purpose of the discussion, I'm interested in the second part of the question around the notion of social cohesion, and in particular, social cohesion for children and young people. The role of the arts as a contributor to society is activated in the document through Goal 4, to increase and strengthen the capacity of the arts to contribute to our society and economy. Dig a bit deeper, and this goal, and there is a strong positioning of the arts in educational contexts that will be animated through the implementation of our national curriculum for primary and secondary schools. One indicator for the achievement of Goal 4 is expressed as the arts and creativity are increasingly included in the mainstream of broader government policies aimed at strengthening our society and economy. So where is the indicator around social cohesion? On the last page of a previous document called the discussion paper, there was a statement, and it came very late in the document, but it's interesting to talk about it. It stated, research undertaken by the Australia Council and Regional Arts Australia shows that there is compelling evidence for the arts and creativity in building resilience and identity in regions and Indigenous communities. It then goes on to say that the arts play a vital role in community well-being. For those of you that have got any interest in this area, there are 5 parts to a robust sense of well-being for an individual and a community. They can be categorised as the physical, the psychological, the economic, environmental and social. As theatre and other live performing arts are a communal event, a shared event, then the social element is, I would argue, very strong. Live performance as a social event is, of course, not a new phenomenon. But given research about this current generation and their experience of loneliness, perhaps it is time to turn our attention to how the performing arts and performance venues might be able to ramp up the live and analogue experience to contribute to social cohesion and well-being for our young people. Indeed, how venues and companies wrap designed social interactions around the event before and after perhaps needs more attention than ever before. So now to my third and final question, and I'm going to deal with it in 2 parts. Firstly, what is the place of the arts in the 21st century Australian society? And it's interesting, this question was posed at the very beginning of our lobbying for the position of the national curriculum with the then Federal Minister for the Arts, Peter Garrett. He actually asked us that, why are we doing this? For me, dance, drama, music and visual art as organised entities have existed for over 3,000 years in Western culture, and if we look at our own Indigenous heritage, for 40,000 years. They transcend geographic boundaries, unite cultures, and above all, help us to understand what it means to be human. It could be argued that the very first aesthetic engagement took place when cave dwellers told stories about the great hunt by the flickering flames of the fire as shadows danced on the cave walls. The relatively new kid on the block in terms of our historic arts timeline, media arts, is also a teller of stories. The longevity of our art forms is about our need to tell stories to help us understand the world in which we live. Essentially, art is a transaction of meaning-making. The 21st century has thrown us what Horst Rittal categorised as wicked problems. A wicked problem is a social or cultural problem that is difficult or impossible to solve for four main reasons. 1, it may present incomplete or contradictory knowledge. 2, the number of people and opinions are too large. 3, the economic environment is vast. Or 4, the problems are internet connected with other problems, so you can't solve one without solving another. The arts loves to play with these ideas, these wicked problems, because as art forms we can tolerate ambiguity. In fact, I would argue the question that most of you would ask your students in your classrooms is, what if? So perhaps students working in the arts can help pose solutions to these wicked problems and generate ideas for alternative futures. So if you ask me why our art forms should be sustained in the 21st century, I would answer you as follows. I believe young people crave the live experience because a good deal of their life is now played out online. Humans are social creatures and require human contact, but the digital age has caused a seismic shift in how we experience life and engage with others. Engagement in the live arts facilitate for our young people real-time, face-to-face social interaction, thereby reducing the possibility of reduced social interaction syndrome. For this reason, at this point in time, I believe the live performing arts and performing arts venues here and around Australia may be able to provide new platforms for young people's social cohesion and well-being now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra, and I can't think of a better person to be leading the research into, give me the acronym again, next year at the Powerhouse.
APAM.
Into APAM, yes, Sandra's leading that research nationally. So we've got time for just a couple of questions, just very quickly. Are there any questions? You've stunned them, yes. Did you get that? Yes. If Sandra will allow it, we'll put it on the QUT and the QPAC website. Absolutely, I'm sure we'll be able to do that. Yes. I mean, I think it's absolutely fascinating because the QPAC has been engaged in this whole public value, and I think what you're talking about is what is the public value of the arts. And we had Professor Mark Moore here from Harvard for the last couple of days, and you know, he's very much about social cohesion, and I think that's absolutely right. He talks about how do we get the I's to become we's, and I think that's what you're talking about. I guess the other thing that I would add to it as well, and this was the intervention that I made, is that, we mustn't sound special, but the arts is, as you know, Gardner and Eisner and all those people say, it is a special way of knowing, it is a different way of knowing the world, just like sport is a different way of knowing the world, and we mustn't lose that as well. But Sandra, thanks again for your really provocative, and thoughtful keynote, and we'll make sure that it gets to you all. Would you please join me in thanking Sandra for her wonderful keynote? Sandra? Thank you, Sandra. Now, okay.